Good evening, comrades, brothers, and sisters. Thank you for having me once again. Thank you. Thanks. No problem. I'm here to talk about Wall Street's school-to-prison pipeline, which is very much connected with what has been said about the U.S. attempting to provoke, to invade territories in an imperialistic way in order to expand capital. Just to transition from the talk on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the school-to-prison pipeline in the United States. Capital is constantly trying to expand itself, and the capitalists will stop at nothing to make sure that every inch of this world is commercialized, from Ferguson to the DPRK to Palestine and to the border. And this is very much connected with people trying to promote profits and trying to make money off of commercializing the entire world and building McDonald's everywhere and Burger King and all of these different corporations. So I just wanted to make that aware that this is very much connected to that. So what is Wall Street's school-to-prison pipeline? I define it as a contradiction of capitalism, which, as always, creates a deeper division between the ruling economic class and the mass, the oppressed class, the 99%. And of course, always at the expense of the latter. It is also one of the main manifestations of capitalist overproduction, resulting from the anarchy of national production process that is inherent in capitalism. Since in the United States, the free market and the free enterprise system is championed over all other forms of economic forms, or over all other economic and political systems, there is an anarchy of production that exists where we don't have central planning and we don't have a system where the people come together to decide what we need. And there isn't a system that in place that is built for us, the masses, the 99%, to really decide where the profits or the value of our society are being directed toward. And this is part of what is called the anarchy of production, where there is no centralized planning, and the production process is extremely anarchical in the sense that there is no leadership or no central committee of peoples deciding how funds are allocated. So that is very important to note in capitalism and in the system, the historical moment that we're in today. Just talking about that, I want to share some statistics on student debt, which, even just researching these really made me sick to my stomach. In 2012, 71% of all students graduating from four-year colleges had student loan debt. That represents 1.3 million students graduating with debt, up from 1.1 million in 2008 and 0.9 million in 2004. In 2012, 66% of graduates from public colleges had student loans. 75% of graduates from private nonprofit colleges had student loans, and 88% of graduates from for-profit colleges had student loans. Additionally, the average debt levels for all graduating seniors with student loans rose to $29,400 in 2012, a 25% increase from $23,450 in 2008. Lastly, graduates who received Pell Grants, most of whom had family incomes under $40,000, were much more likely to borrow and to borrow more. I want to stress the last point. In terms of families that have incomes over $40,000, there's a huge fallacy that exists in this country that the poorest, the people who come from the lowest economic levels and who come from poor working class families, that they're always able to receive the most amount of financial aid from the government, and that they have nothing to worry about. That is a complete fallacy, because statistics have shown that people who come from working class backgrounds, people who come from families that aren't able to afford college tuition, actually end up taking out more loans, because every year there are continual cuts to education, as we know. Every year Congress allocates less money on education. So the fallacy of students from working class backgrounds always receiving more money in this country needs to be addressed and needs to be completely destroyed, because the poorest people in this country are the ones who are in most debt, and these are the students who are going to be, tied down to this debt for the rest of their life. All of the student debt is a reflection of capitalist society. There are liberals who say that the system is broken, but the system has always been broken. It was never meant to provide for the best quality education for students in society. Education in capitalist society is not designed to create the new Galileos or the new, Darwins or Marx or these big theoretical, figures who have contributed so much to development of knowledge. Education in capitalist society is about promoting the expansion of capital. I'm sure many of you have seen throughout the years in different institutions that the sciences, the natural sciences and the social sciences have been broken down and atomized. The division of labor in capitalist society translates into the division of labor and knowledge. Meaning that instead of a student, learning about the social sciences in general, about economics, history, politics, philosophy, all of those fields of knowledge are being broken down and atomized into specific fields where people are, quote, specialists, right? And the purpose of this is to create a very individualistic, atomized student who refuses to learn things outside of their realm of their specific track of knowledge, which is very helpful for capitalism. Because someone who's studying law enforcement, someone getting a degree in law enforcement from a private university will only learn about maybe they'll take 1 or 2 classes in economics or philosophy or something else, but they won't understand the class nature of the state or the history of Wall Street or different elements that are very interrelated with what they're studying. And just as during the Industrial Revolution, in the United States and in England, factories created the assembly line where you had one person working, 10, 12 hours a day doing the same task, thousands of times over. That's translating over into capitalist society as well, in terms of pedagogy and education, in the sense that all of these different currents of knowledge are being broken down and atomized. And that is the reality of education in capitalist society, because capitalists, the banks, they don't want people who are well-rounded individuals and have an understanding of all of these different fields of knowledge. They want people who are gears in a machine, right? They want people who will play a specific role or a specific task, just as a machine or a tool. So that is important to keep in mind in terms of talking about capitalism and student debt. Education is used for the expansion of capital and for private corporations because oftentimes it is the very same private corporations that are funding people and students to go to school in the first place. That is very important to note. There are many students who will receive student loans from institutions like Bank of America and Chase and Sallie Mae and all of these different banks that are invested in corporations that fulfill the role of the imperialists abroad. These are the same corporations that are invested in think tanks around the world that promote globalization, that promote the commercialization of the world, and these are the institutions that are funding people to go to school. And there's a social contract that is formed where these students are bound by the rules and the protocols of the lenders, which is modern day slavery. There is a very dangerous atomization and division of labor and education that creates a very difficult situation for understanding the way our society works in capitalism and the way that knowledge of the world is deterred. And ultimately, every year, with the breakdown of departments into different fields, and with the continual breakdown of schools and the technocracy, you have different fields that require specific technical skills, because they're more practical, right? And these are all the terminologies that capitalists use. Practicality, utility. This is all John Stuart Mill. This is all Adam Smith and John Locke. And this is happening today, where people, because they don't possess certain technical skills or certain skills in a field, are not able to access the means of production and are excluded from the formal economy, which leads many to leave the formal economy and to make profits for their own sustenance outside of it, which leads to what's called crime and leads to what is known as breaking the law. So that leads me into talking a little bit about the prisons in this country and the role of the state and the role of the law in pretty much pushing all of these people who have no means of providing for themselves, because there's an overproduction of degrees, and there's an overproduction of different fields of study that benefit the ruling class. And these people have no way of sustaining themselves and are forced to become the lumpen proletariat, to become the coke dealer on the corner, or the bootlegger. So these are some very important statistics to mention. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. The total incarcerated population in the United States is 2.4 million, and that represents a 500% increase over the past 30 years. 1 in 28 American children has a parent behind bars. 65 million Americans have a criminal background. There are more people behind bars today for a drug offense than there were in 1980 for all offenses combined. And let's definitely keep in mind the role of the free trade agreements in drug offenses, and the relationship between free trade and militarization in Latin America, and the influx of all of these commercialized drugs contributing to the prison population. The U.S. spent $80 billion on incarceration in 2010 alone, and that figure increases every year. And this is where the class and race dynamics really come in. 3 out of 4 young black men in Washington, D.C. can expect to serve time behind bars. 3 out of 4. This is despite the fact that people of all races use and sell drugs at the same rate. African Americans comprise 12% of regular drug users, but almost 40% of those arrested for drug offenses. 80% of defendants cannot afford a lawyer. Tens of thousands of people who go to jail every year without ever talking to a lawyer or going on trial. And finally, a public defender will routinely have a caseload of more than 100 clients at a time, right? And one of the things the bourgeoisie prides itself in this country in is the fact that everyone supposedly has access to an attorney, to the same rights, and it assumes that everyone's situation is exactly equal, and that everyone has exactly the same presence before the law, which is one of the biggest fallacies that continues to exist. Just putting emphasis on that last point, that a public defender will routinely have a caseload of more than 100 clients at a time. That really goes to show you how much that public defender is a worker, right? And over 100 clients at a time really creates a situation where the quality of that defense is much lower than someone who can provide for a really great attorney. So there is a class nature to the law. There is a class nature to, people from a working class background not being able to afford great attorneys, and that affecting their subsequent ruling. And most of these people are put in jails, as we know. So there is a race and class dynamic to the Wall Street school-to-prison pipeline, which is very much intertwined with student debt. Now, Now, what are the functions of prisons in capitalist society? Prisons and law enforcement are they're the manifestations of capitalist society that once we enter a socialist society, we'll look back at them in museums and really marvel as to why prisons even existed when people's needs and sustenance are met. Prisons will be something that are talked about in history books and as shown in museums, and people will look back, at our barbarous society that we live in today, and really be surprised, because prisons serve functions of the state, and the state serve functions of the ruling class, right? So the same companies and the same banks that are funding students to go to school every year with extremely high interest rates that increase every year, those are the same banks that invest in the private prison industrial complex. These are the same corporations, right? The same companies, the same banks that are going into neighborhoods in Ferguson and in Brooklyn and all over the country in working class black and brown communities. These are the same banks that are funding the prisons that they end up putting those same people in, because they can't pay for bills, because guess what, their loans, their interest rates are too high, and they're forced to sell drugs or something else. So this is very important in understanding, even today with the Black Lives Matter movement and the movement going on today, is that the solution, isn't narrow, it isn't atomized, and unfortunately we've been forced in capitalist society to look at our options for a better future in a very narrow way. We talk about cameras on police officers, we talk about having a specific position where someone oversees the activities of police, and these are very atomized, broken down solutions that are a reflection of the kind of atomization we live in capitalist society. Because we know that the solution requires a complete overhaul of the capitalist mode of production and a complete overhaul of the banks and education. We don't need banks and education. We need people in education. We need popular education. We need proletariat education. We don't need an education that supports globalization or supports the expansion of NGOs all over the world to further the profits of the capitalist ruling class. We need education that will have people, organized in a way that we can feed everyone and provide everyone with housing. And we have so many tasks ahead of us, and that is the very type of education that we're fighting for. We want proletarian education. And finally, to close off, I just want to remind everyone that slavery does transform itself. Slavery transforms itself, racism transforms itself, and capitalist oppression transforms itself, meaning that the slavery of the 18 and 1700s looks very much different today. It still exists. We do live in a slave society. It's just very hidden, and it's very we're not able to point it out because the contradictions haven't exposed themselves yet. But as we know, they're beginning to. So that's something to keep in mind. J.P. Morgan, Sallie Mae, Chase, Bank of America, all of the predecessors of these organizations were the same people who were involved with the slave trades. They were the same people who first brought the slaves to Wall Street to trade them. These are the same people who worked with Rhodes, Cecile Rhodes, to create programs like Rhodes Scholarship that basically promoted European white supremacy and pro-democracy. So that's something to keep in mind. In talking about Wall Street School to Prison Pipeline, there is a solution, and the solution is, it's showing itself. You see the germs of socialism and the germs of popular education exposing themselves now. And it's really a matter of us to fight for proletarian education, to boycott the banks, to boycott student debt. For all of my comrades in debt out there, I say don't pay it. Don't pay your student debt. Fight that. So I just wanted to really express that, and thank you guys for having me. Thank you. I just I want to say, have patience with, like everyone has been saying, have patience with the masses, have patience with the people, because it is always the people who liberate themselves. And I was at a demo I want to say like a week ago, and in East New York with for Kai Gurley, and it was a very powerful demonstration. There were the few Marxist organizations and anarchist organizations, but the people at the forefront were black women and black men, which is very inspiring. So have patience with the masses. They always liberate themselves, and it's going to take time. There are always going to be those people. I have people in my family who have police officers and things of that nature. I have very reactionary elements. I'm sure we all do in our families, but those people after a while come to their senses once the antagonisms are undeniable. Once it's very clearly shown the fascistic nature of the police. So have patience, and make sure that for this movement, especially with Black History Month coming up, that black women, especially black women, that are at the forefront, and always let them speak first. The revolution, anti-capitalist revolution in the U.S. would be impossible without black liberation. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.